this and that and what the fuck else, episode 106. In this episode I'm going to talk about my favorite topic, the global revolution. I've got some green stuff here, a few things about health and NATO. And there's a what the fuck at the end that will only make you shake your head. The load shedding is rough here in South Africa, and it seems like it's getting worse. And we have now seen articles published where technical people are talking about the effect of the low-grade coal on the power stations. And then we have this issue of the ANC. Now I believe they want to set up an anti-corruption commission. What the fuck is that? They just put up commissions and commissions and commissions. The only thing they are achieving with these fucking commissions is to create more opportunities for people to make a shitload of money. And this government is actually, in all practical terms, bankrupt. I don't see too many journalists talking about the national debt. I don't see that. And we saw now some of the African states that was there in America, Zambia and another one, signed some fucking crazy deal where an American company is taking control over all their copper. What the hell is wrong with these blacks? Are they thick? They fought wars for liberation to get rid of the colonial masters, and now what are they doing? They're surrendering their shit to these Americans for that. Not to the advantage of the population. The beneficiaries is the top selected cadres, and the rest of the population will suffer. And South Africa is doing the same. This fucking ANC is giving our coal to the Germans. For a start, they should say, right, you want our coal, pay in rands. Pay in rands. That will be a good start. But I also don't see MSM journalists reporting that. No. Nobody pushes that point. Everybody is quiet about it. I've never seen a single article by a journalist about the probability that the ANC is stealing a lot of the money they are making by buying cheap Russian oil. We're a BRICS country. We get a discount on our oil from Russia. Where the fuck is that discount? Who is stealing that? But they quote us on the TVs, yeah, the global oil price per barrel. And they use that to milk us at the pump. And I'm sure they're stealing the discounts that we're getting from Russia. But in any case, who am I? I'm a lonely voice sitting here in the bush. Yeah, I don't know where this is going to end. And then they want to take over the national health system. They fucked the health system up to a point where people are lying on the floors and dying in the passages. And now they want to take over the health system of South Africa. South Africa needs a regime change, and they need it now. Not in 2 years' time. Forget about that fucking election. It's a dream. Regime change now. Break the republic up now. That is the only way that we're going to survive. Because in that broken up republic, there will be states that will do well, because they will have proper management. But let's carry on. I'm struggling to keep up with the news. This load shedding is really buckering my schedules up big time. And I'm going to start with this photograph as per usual. Look at that image, and when you look at it, it will catch your attention. But if this was now entered into a photographic competition, it would be in the category for altered realities. And obviously there is a lot of digital manipulation that happened in this shot. But for me, the most distracting thing is, if you look at this light stream on the pebbles, that light stream should have been directed to line up with the sun. Now it's at an offset to the sun, and to me it's very disturbing. Also, the sand on the beach, if this light that is on these pebbles was true, the sand would have been also lit up. So although it's a good shot and it is framed well and it is composed well, the digital manipulation was not so hot. And then we come to my favorite topic, global revolution. The Chinese offered new roads, dams and factories. Russians are delivering free fertilizers. What are the Americans offering other than threats, sanctions and discriminative visa protocols? A very good question, but unfortunately the political elite will not read it and will not respond. Some stunning stats on what China has built in Africa. 100 seaports, 1,000 bridges, 10,000 kilometers of railways, 100,000 kilometers of highways, 200,000 kilometers of optical fiber for broadband internet. What has the USA done other than whining about Chinese influence? A very valid question. And another thing is that every year the Chinese writes off a portion of the debt of some of these countries. What does the West do? Give more loans, charge more interest. I see Ghana's paying 70% of its GDP on interest alone. There's no fucking way that that country can survive that. Now to me, this is quite an interesting thing. Rumors swirl that Musk is creating a payment processing system that would compete with PayPal. And I would not be surprised if he actually does it. And with PayPal now being politicized and used as a weapon, I think that it is a good thing if Musk would do that. And then there is this. This must make Blinken cringe and develop hemorrhoids. Russia will begin supplying Iran with 24 Su-35 fighter jets in 2023. The jets ordered by Egypt, but it cancelled the deal. Americans confirmed the news, but didn't mention the nationality of the pilots, describing them as pilots from a country in the Middle East. I just smiled when I read that. The West has underestimated the rest of the world, and the Western arrogance made them believe that they are the top dogs and will stay there. And then we get this from Putin. The West's war of economic aggression against Russia is falling. The West waged a war of economic aggression against Russia, but its prediction on its economic collapse did not materialize. The ruble is one of the strongest currencies in the world at the moment, partly due to the transfer of gas payments into rubles. Next year's budget will only have a small deficit of 2% of GDP, one of the best in the G20. And the news from Russia just gets better and better, and the news from the West gets darker and darker. Then there's this little bit of a disturbing post. In all the global drama, has anyone else noticed that the US government is bankrupt? Anyone expecting a soft landing doesn't understand the situation. There will be no landing at all. The economy will just crash and burn. The Fed made a deal with the devil when it implemented ZIRP and QE to delay the pain. Now the devil is here to collect. I expect precious metals and precious metals mining stocks to go way up as a result of an economic crash. The result will be massive money printing, i.e. inflation, which will be very bullish for gold and silver. And yes, many people talk about the fact that the American government is bankrupt, and there's lots of talks about the petrodollar seeing its ass, and the signs are clearly there. A hell of a lot of trade is moved out of the dollar system in the past 6 months. I haven't seen figures yet of exactly how, because many people are guessing, because it seems like the Russians and the Chinese and the Indians and all the guys trading with Russia, they're not publishing those figures freely. But the reality is, if the American economy crash and burn, the whole world is going to feel it for sure. And there are certain countries, especially countries that have got their reserves in American bonds or dollars, they will go down with them. So it's time to wake up. And then we get to the green thing. I like this oak, Peter Clark, and he publishes some disturbing stuff from time to time. Disturbing for the greenies. The truth of Earth's evolving climate is written in the rich legacy of rock and ice. Studied by paleontologists, long-term weather is due only to the forces of nature, not a trace gas. This fake ideology by the UN and rich globalists is a global coup d'etat. And that is true. This is a scam. They're trying to take us for a ride again. And then this disturbing shit. Biden pledges US taxpayers will pay South Africa $8 billion to shut down their coal power plants. What the fuck is that? We cannot survive without the coal power plants. All these Western countries built their economies and became rich on coal power. Now they want to deny the developing world from having coal power. And I'm the bliksem if I want to put my country with the developing world, but it can't be otherwise. In '93 it was not. It was part of the first world, with the third world portion. Now this whole fucking country is a third world. But this Biden shit, Cyril took that money from that guy, and he came back, and the next Andre de Ruyter was on the green wagon. And then we get to some health stuff. You've been tricked. Western medicine promulgates the germ theory model theorized by Louis Pasteur. The germ theory model is a lie and they know it. However, that model is far more profitable than the terrain theory theorized by the contemporary Claude Bernard and Antoine Béchamp. The terrain theory says that the biological terrain is the better focus for medicine than the pathogen itself. Basically, it means our environment is what is triggering disease. That is already within ourselves. On Louis Pasteur's deathbed, he said, Bernard was right, I was wrong. The pathogen is nothing, the terrain is everything. And then you look at that picture, the lie, the germ theory is vaccinate the fish, and the terrain theory is clean up the tank. And that makes sense. And that is why in developed countries where their hygiene improves and things like that, their health also improves. But nowadays they pump you full of fucking drugs, you don't have a clue. And then we get to this one, and this, I shook my head when I saw that. That's from that crazy island down there south called New Zealand, with that lunatic in charge. New Zealand phases out consumption of tobacco. New laws in New Zealand ban selling tobacco to Kiwis born after January 1, 2009. The legislation has introduced fines of up to New Zealand dollars 150,000, that is 96,000 US dollars, and will also reduce the amount of nicotine allowed in tobacco products, while cutting the number of retailers able to sell it by 90%. This legislation accelerates progress towards a smoke-free future, Associate Health Minister Dr. Ayesha Baral said in a statement. You see, these politicians, they don't have got fucking work for their hands, and they sit and they think shit out like this. Here in South Africa we had the same fucking. They clamped down on cigarettes like hell. And what was the outcome? The illegal cigarette trade is booming. It is massive. And with the lockdown shit, that illegal trade became even more potent. But how can you talk to these politicians? You cannot. These things are living in a world of their own. They're not based in reality, and they're not part of our population. They're a fucking race and a species on their own, globally. And I have done a skidmark about that. And then we look at this, and this is very disturbing. And you look at, and there's a lot of talk about this, and there are publications about this. Look at that IQ range, then IQ classification. Now it's common knowledge that our Africa south of the Sahara is the average IQ 69. And where does 69 bring you? Morons. Think about that. And then we get to more health madness, and look at this crazy fucking thing. This is not a human, this is a Satanist. Listen to what she wants to do. Gretchen Whitmer directs Michigan government to implement abortions up to birth. What the hell is that? But, most disturbing, the American people are apparently taking this shit. There was a time in history when a person says something like this, the next they swing from a rope. And that is how society survived. But now, they get their fucking faces plastered on social media and standing there with a big grin as if she is something. Meanwhile, she's just a fucking killer. And listen to this one. Canada is totally off the rails. Medically assisted deaths could save millions in healthcare spending. Across Canada, Journal calculates up to $136.8 million in savings. There it is. They're killing the people. And that's what that Arab said to me at that braai we had in the desert in 2005. Look, they're killing the people. And the next item really fucking upset me. And it's disturbing. It's a video. I don't want to put these types of videos up. And look at that baby's arm. Just look at that arm. And that thing is about, that nurse was wiggling it with her fingers in the video. That whole purple bundle you see there was moving around as if it was a solid mass. Newborn hepatitis B vaccine adverse reactions. And you can read the second line there, starting with no. I'm not going to read it. This is shocking. And people is allowing Satanists to do this to the babies. And then we get to the immigration thing. Tens of thousands of migrants in Mexico heading to the US border, says the CBP source. A Border Patrol intelligence alert warns that tens of thousands of migrants are prepared to move to the US border from southern Mexico. Look at that. But these clever fucking Americans, they've got bases around the world where there's soldiers all around the world. In the meantime, their own country is invaded. They actually deserve to suffer. And then there's some information here. As for the international order that we have worked for generations to build, ordinary men and women are too small-minded to govern their own affairs. That order and progress can only come when individuals surrender their rights to an all-powerful sovereign. And that was from that fucking diversity experiment the Americans tried, and that failed miserably. Barack Saddam Hussein Obama. Guys, I don't know what the hell is going on. The Americans are giving their country away. But they want to come to Africa and fight here, and they go to Asia and fight there, they go and fight in Europe, they fight all over the fucking place. In the meantime, their own country is going for a ball of shit. One of these days they're going to fight for breath. And then look at this image, and this is a good plan for pedophiles. That is the type of bouquet that you offer them. Flowers for the pedophiles. I like it. And then we get to this crazy woman, Annalena Baerbock, but as Alex called her, Annalena Dambak. Serbian troops in Kosovo are unacceptable. The Kumanovo Agreement, the UN Charter, Resolution 1244, the Brussels Agreement, or the Washington Agreement, each agreement must be ignored at all costs. How the fuck does that work? I look at that face, and she reminds me of a tent pen. You want to bliksem it into the ground. In any case, or a bicycle, you just want to step on it. Look at this. Serbian troops in Kosovo are unacceptable. And all those agreements states that it is not unacceptable, and that was agreed on. But now, NATO is busy stirring big shit in Kosovo. And those Europeans are like bitches on heat about a fucking war right in the middle of their union. I don't know what is going to happen in Europe. Now listen to this, cock. And this is now at the Americans hold an African summit. But listen to this. US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin warned African leaders at a summit today that China and Russia risk destabilizing the continent with their rising involvement. He warns us. They are the biggest fucking destabilizers on this earth. But he warns Africa about the Russians and the Chinese. Meanwhile, the Russians and the Chinese are building infrastructure in Africa. And then Mari answered him. He should look in the USA's own backyard. There isn't a more destabilizing country on the planet than the USA along with NATO. And that is the facts. Now listen to this fucking idiotic thing. The G7 leaders declared that they would put Putin on trial. There can be no impunity for war crimes and other atrocities. We will hold President Putin and those responsible to account in accordance with international law. I wonder if dialogue is even possible with someone who dreams of you humiliated and helpless or rotting in prison. This statement is further evidence that no one needs negotiations except Russia. The war in Ukraine is what the West needs, and of course the defeat of Russia, and they can dream on. The Russians are fucking the NATO up in the Ukraine, big time. But listen to that. They want to put, the G7, they want to put Putin on trial. And what about the fucking bombing in Serbia? What about the bombings in Libya? What about the bombings in Syria? What about the bombings in Yemen? What about the bombings in Afghanistan? Millions of people killed by the fucking West. All of those leaders should have been on trial already and sent to the ropes. But they want to put Putin on trial. This West deserves to be destroyed. Now listen to this. Deputy Chairman of the Russian Security Council, Dmitry Medvedev, said that the Moscow can consider military facilities and infrastructure, including energy facilities of NATO countries, as well as their military political leadership, as legitimate targets for strikes. Which is quite true, seeing how the West is pumping in weapons and supporting Ukraine and providing them with what is needed to kill the Russians. And if you hear the tap tap on the window in the background, that's a puffback that is now once again losing his fucking mind and taking the window. Medvedev, today there is a main question. Can a hybrid war de facto declared by NATO on our country be considered the entry of the alliance into a war against Russia? Can the supply of huge amounts of weapons to Ukraine be considered as an attack on Russia? And I agree with him, and it is right. I'm waiting for the first Kinshall that hits a NATO base in Germany or in Poland. The leaders of NATO countries unanimously sing that their countries and the entire bloc are not at war with Russia, but everyone is well aware that this isn't the case. That is what Medvedev posted on his Telegram channel. Here is a summary of the Minsk Agreement, 13 points of the Minsk Agreement. Immediate and comprehensive ceasefire. 2. Withdrawal of all heavy weapons by both sides. 3. Monitoring and verification by the OSCE. 4. Start dialogue on interim self-government for Donetsk and Luhansk regions in accordance with the Ukraine law and acknowledge their special status by parliamentary resolution. 5. A pardon and amnesty for people involved in the fighting. 6. An exchange of hostages and prisoners. 7. Provision of humanitarian assistance. 8. resumption of socio-economic ties, including pensions. 9. Restoration of full control of the state border by the government of Ukraine. 10. Withdrawal of all foreign armed formations, military equipment and mercenaries. 11. Constitutional reform in Ukraine, including decentralization with specific mention of Donetsk and Luhansk. 12. Election in Donetsk and Luhansk on terms to be agreed with their representatives. 13. Intensifying the work of the trilateral contact group comprising representatives of Russia, Ukraine and the OSCE. And that is, in short, what the Minsk Agreement was about, and that was the thing with which the West made a deliberate choice to bullshit Russia. And now we get to that moment, that what a fuck moment, and this one you can just look at it and shake your head. Look at that. Worth 10 million and a princess. Worth 500 million, oppressed. Worth 2 billion, oppressed. And then there's that guy, worth $2, privileged. And that is unfortunately how it. The white race is doomed for extinction. The world powers, under leadership of the WEF, has decided that white people must go. If you're white, accept it, that you are in danger. Please give me a like and a subscribe and share the thing. And thank you very much for your support.